Today is Wednesday, June 5th. It's the fourth day of our bike trip. We've left Kenmare and riding up across the Carrig Peninsula, headed to Mall's Gap. Kenmare's back there. And that's where we're headed, to Mall's Gap. I believe that this is Mall's Gap, right up here. This is Carragh Lake on the road to Sneem. This is the Pancake Cottage. This is on the road, the small road, to Glencar. This is still the road to Glencar. Here's a little climb we have coming up. Almost to the top. These rocks everywhere, just amazing. This little guy's lost his way and can't figure out how to get back across the fence. There's Mama. Oh, okay, see you later. This is the pass we just rode down from. This is the view from our lunch spot at Blackstone House B&B. Maureen's made another great lunch for us today. Thanks for lunch.
Absolutely. The lake that I've been riding along for the last little while
gets down to this point and then just turns back into a stream. This is our home for the next 2 nights, the Carrig Country House. This is my room in the Carrig Country House. And here's the lake that we just rode around, and the road along the lake. And then down to that stone bridge.
I'm fine. I'll have one. Okay.
Well, this is a very relaxed atmosphere altogether. Yeah, almost too relaxed. But I suppose it's conducive to what I do, which is very much the oral tradition. A tradition that was part and parcel of life around here for a long, long time. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my own background, and through that you will see this thread of storytelling. My generation has seen possibly the greatest change that could possibly come in a country in one generation. I don't know how much of the history of the country you know. You probably know very little. When you know the size of it for a start, it's the size of Indiana, Maine, Wisconsin, that's about it. Tiny country perched on the edge of Europe. But we had our troubles with the British for many years, 800 years in fact. You had some trouble with them too in your part of the world.
We did.
You had one decent revolution and you got it right, and that was the end of it. We had 6 revolutions before we got it right. Tell me this and tell me no more. Is there anyone sitting around this fireside tonight that could tell me how the first plough in Ireland came to be invented? Huh, it looks like as if I'm not going to get any answer. I mightn't have the answer to that question either, except that I knew these 2 hunchbacks. One of them was one of the crankiest and contrariest men that ever stood into shoe leather, and the other fellow was a fine, happy-go-lucky sort of man. One day, the happier of the 2 hunchbacks went into town, for 'twas a fair day or a market day in town. Now at the best of times, if he was travelling along a country road, and if he came to a hump on the road, he was so hunched over to the ground, he'd have to carry his nose around the hump. He arrived into town, fell in among great company, time passed easily. Drink flowed freely, and when darkness fell, and 'twas time for the hunchback to head for home, he was in bad shape to walk the 3 miles. He left the village on very unsteady feet, and he was a mile out of town, when the sleep and the drink got the better of him. He could go no further, and with great difficulty he climbed over a low fence, and threw himself down at the foot of a big rock. And now I'm coming to the crucial part of my story. He fell on top of 6 mushrooms, and out jumped 6 of the wee folk, mad as hatters, and started cursing and blasting him in Gaelic. Gras the Dealho, Moloch Deort, and a lot more I couldn't repeat with women in the audience. I'm sorry, gentlemen, says the hunchback, I didn't know you were there. Now you see, mushrooms are the fairies' umbrellas, and you daren't interfere with a mushroom while you're in the Emerald Isle. I hope there's nobody listening to me that had the misfortune of eating a mushroom since you came to Ireland. For if you did, you will be in dire trouble before the end of the world. Mark my words. That hunchback threw himself down at the edge of a fairy fort. Now the wee folk can only start their capers after midnight, and they have to be gone again before the March rooster crows in the morning. Your man fell into a drunken sleep, and out into the night he heard the words of a song in Gaelic coming through the night air. De luin de mort, de luin de mort, Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. And he jumped up out of his sleep and he said, fine song, but they don't know all the words of it. And he added a little piece onto the song. De luin de mort, de luin de mort, de luin de mort de Cedi. There was a golden silence inside in the fairy fort, a flash of lightning. The fort split open. Out came hundreds of the wee folk. And there was one tall fella in the middle of them, about 2'6", waving a flag. Who is the mancy that gave us the words of a song that we're looking for the past 2,000 years? And they invited the hunchback into the fairy fort. Now there's one piece of advice I'll give you before I go a step further. If you ever have the good fortune or the misfortune to be invited into a fairy fort, always refuse the first drink. Take everything after that. And that's what the hunchback did. And when he refused the first drink, the king of the fairies looked down from his throne and he said to him, seeing that you won't take a drink, can we do anything at all for you? Oh God, you can, he says. Will somebody take that misfortune of a hump off my back? You won't believe what happened. 20 fairies gathered round him, and while you'll be kicking your fingers, they removed the hunch off his back, put it over in the corner, threw a covering over it, and he remembered no more until he woke outside the fort in the morning. And for the first time in his life he was able to straighten his back. Headed for home, the happiest man in Ireland. Who did he meet at the edge of his own village? Only the second hunchback, Mr. Know-all. You got rid of it. How did you do it? He told him the full story. The second hunchback turned on his heels, walked all the way to the fairy fort, found the big rock, threw himself down at the foot of it, and fell on top of 10 mushrooms, and out jumped 10 of the wee folk, mad as hatters, and started cursing and blasting him in Gaelic. And he cursed him back. That was his first mistake. Fell asleep. Out into the night he heard the words of a song in Gaelic wafting through the night air. De luin de mort, de luin de mort, de luin de mort de Cedi. And the old hunchback jumped up and he says, is that the best I can do? He broke into a raucous, coarse old song, no rhyme, no tune, no meaning, and before he knew where he was, there was a clap of thunder. The fort split open. Out came hundreds of the wee folk. They caught him by the ears, by the hair, by the legs, and pulled him into the fairy fort, right under the throne of the king of the fairies. And one small man looked up to the king and says, what will we do with the man that spoiled the beautiful song we learned last night? And the king said, go over to the corner, bring me back that hump, and put it on top of what he already has. Oh, God help us. When that hunchback woke outside the fort in the morning, let me tell you something, if his nose was close to the ground before he went in, it was now touching the ground. And he tried to walk forward to go home, and he couldn't. How could he? His nose was in the way. And the only way he could get home was to turn around and back his way across the fields. And on the way, his nose opened up a trench. An old Irish farmer saw it happening and thought it a wonderful idea for inventing a plough. And that's how the first plough in Ireland came to be invented. Oh,
Hey, bravo!
if you believe that, you believe anything.
That's wonderful.
Well, what we did for you there was create the image of the shallacking, give you a little of the flavour of the language, of the brogue really, and if you listen to the language around here, almost every S that's spoken, the letter H is put in. For example, they don't say steak. I bought a pound of steak. A local farmer said, I bought a pound of steak. We put an H sound there. It's very common. I come from a tiny village called Sneem, if you want to be very precise, but the locals say Sneem, Sneem. And that comes through in the story there. He wasn't sleeping, he was sleeping.